In this day and age, almost everything feels like a sequel. Companies and developers are taking less risk as production costs continue to skyrocket. Today's video, however, isn't about nitpicking originality in gaming. Today, we're actually going to talk about 5 video game sequels that we need, but will probably never get made. Now keep in mind, this is a list dedicated to the video game sequels that are almost impossible to happen, even though we all want them to. Games like Half-Life 3 and Beyond Good and Evil 2 aren't on this list because you know they're going to be released eventually. That said, let's jump right into things. The Lost Vikings. 23 years. That's how long it's been since The Lost Vikings was first released on the Super Nintendo. Back in 1992, I remember playing this game as a kid for hours upon end. The novelty of being able to use 3 characters in a single player co-op experience never stopped blowing my mind. I didn't realize it then, but as I got older, I learned that this classic video game was actually made by a company that everyone knows today. Blizzard. In 1997, Blizzard released The Lost Vikings 2 for the Super Nintendo that introduced 2 new playable characters. This version of the game later received an updated port with enhanced graphics and voice acting for the PlayStation 1 and Sega Saturn, and since then, for almost 2 decades, fans have wanted Blizzard to make a 3rd sequel to The Lost Vikings. Blizzard even taunted us a few months ago by adding the 3 characters from this game, the Heroes of the Storm. With World of Warcraft and StarCraft satisfying their wallets, a sequel to Lost Vikings looks very unlikely. Luckily though, the original game is available for free on their battle.net website for anyone who wants to play it, so check the link down below in the description for that.
Engine and go, baby!
Beautiful Joe 3. Henshin a go-go, baby! When Beautiful Joe was first unveiled back in 2002, the first thing that came to a lot of people's minds was that Capcom had probably made a typo when trying to spell the word beautiful. However, after seeing and playing the game for ourselves in 2003, a lot of us realized just how beautiful this game really was. With an intense and innovative combination of high speed and slow-mo gameplay, Joe and its slick cel-shaded art style quickly developed a fan base that was hungry for more. A hunger that was satisfied with the quick release of Beautiful Joe 2 not too long after in 2004. Introducing new features and characters that only upped the ante. Now back in 2004, Capcom had registered the web domain for Beautiful Joe 3, but since then Clover Studios, which was a part of Capcom, had been dismantled, causing the majority of their staff to leave Capcom altogether and form Platinum Games, a name many of us are familiar with. The team behind Beautiful Joe is still around, however Capcom owns the IP, which means that unless these 2 companies are willing to play nice, we may never get the Beautiful Joe sequel that we all deserve.
You want some? We'll come and get it.
Pokemon Snap 2. Remember when Nintendo first unveiled Pokemon Snap for the N64 back in the late 90s? A lot of us, including myself, thought that the idea of just taking pictures of Pokemon sounded dumb and boring. And then we played it. And then we couldn't stop playing it. Pokemon Snap was able to perfectly recreate that feeling of catching them all with an on-rails game mechanic that saw us taking the best pictures of wild Pokemon to get the most points. But that's not all. With the inclusion of hidden secrets and Pokemon evolutions, it had us replaying stages dozens of times to just discover everything. A sequel for Pokemon Snap is one of the first ideas that popped into many people's heads when the Wii U gamepad was first introduced, and yet it's still something that will probably never happen. Nintendo isn't the most in-sync company when it comes to what their fans want. Pokemon Snap had us hunting for the original 151 Pokemon, but a true sequel with HD graphics, online photo sharing, branching levels and paths, and with 700 plus Pokemon to catch, would easily make it one of the best games of this generation.
Booker, are you afraid of God?
No, but I'm afraid of you.
BioShock 4. Confession time. I jumped onto the BioShock bandwagon just a wee bit late. When I played the first BioShock game, BioShock Infinite was already out. And let's just say no one heard or saw me for a few days as I binged through one of the most amazing gaming series I've ever experienced in my life. BioShock was a haunting game that was drenched in atmosphere. BioShock 2 was a little more of the same, and while still a great game, it never amazed me as much as the first did. BioShock Infinite, however, was just an absolute blast from beginning to end, and one of the very few games I actually purchased DLC for just to experience more of the story. If you've played through BioShock Infinite, then you know the ending opened up infinite possibilities for BioShock sequels, and the various settings that can be used for future games. However, with Irrational Games being disbanded and Ken Levine no longer in charge of the Bioshock franchise, I can see 2K trying to do a series reboot instead of expanding upon the Bioshock universe that was already created. Ken Levine still works for 2K in a smaller indie division, and I think I speak for everyone, Ken, when I ask, could you kindly develop Bioshock 4?
Well, with what just happened, you really want to take bets on what's possible?
Golden Sun 1 and 2 are without a doubt two of my favorite games of all time. I remember the late nights I would have just solving the various puzzles in the games, tracking down all the Jinn, and making sure my party was always as strong as it needed to be. Golden Sun The Lost Age made things even sweeter when I found out I would be able to transfer my save data from the first game over to continue my epic quest. It took 7 years before a third game was finally released on the Nintendo DS in 2010, and since then we've heard absolutely nothing about a fourth game despite the unresolved plot points and cliffhanger ending that we saw in Golden Sun Dark Dawn. Camelot has gone on record saying the Golden Sun games are made only if the demand is strong enough for one. Unfortunately, while the first two Golden Sun games were able to sell more than 1 million units each worldwide, Dark Dawn only managed to move around 700,000 copies. Golden Sun 4 and the 3DS would be absolutely phenomenal, and if Nintendo actually announced it at E3, I would go freaking crazy. However, the odds are against a new game ever being released. Sadly, the longer they wait, the more people will lose interest in the series other than us diehard Golden Sun fans. I'm personally hoping the fan campaign to get Isaac and Smash Brothers is strong enough to show Nintendo that we want more Golden Sun.